People of Reddit, how did your pet end up with you? I had just moved out of my parents' house and was living in a small apartment. I decided I needed a friend, so I went to the local animal shelter to find a friend. I decided I wanted a cat, since I'd be working a lot, and I wanted to get an older cat so I could spoil it in its golden years. Well, the shelter had a couple of older cats. They took the cats out and I got to spend time with them. Most didn't really seem to match my vibe. At some point, I asked to hang out with an older cat named Puck. I loved his name, nice bit of Shakespearean lore. But he didn't really seem that into me. He stayed in his bin, despite it being open. So I just sat with him and discovered he was very talkative. We had a nice conversation and towards the end, I held out my hand for him to sniff. He gave me a big headbutt, and I knew I was taking him home. Found it in some crackhead's house. She was being abused, the kids were eating her dog food on the floor so she was starving. Gave the crackhead the change in my pocket and took the dog. I used to work at a wildlife rescue center and they had this handicapped stray puppy that they rescued from car accidents several months before I started to work there. She started to follow me around, my GF and I have become in love with her ever since. Sadly, after a year we have to quit our job and had to say goodbye to her. But now after 2 years, we earn enough to move into a new place. We went back and pick up our baby to live with us again. My dog was abandoned in a box at Walmart with his litter mates. My uncle worked there and is a huge dog lover, so he made sure all of them got homes. He ended up taking one of the girls, the other 3 went to other employees. My dog's sister ended up having a litter of her own a year or so later, and those puppies went to family and friends, so now my dog is an uncle. His niece comes to visit sometimes and they play together for hours. The cat was abandoned at a friend's farm. They took her in, but she didn't get along with her cats, so we ended up adopting her instead. The cat just randomly wandered in one day, acting like she owned the place. We took her to the vet to check her health and look for a microchip, but there was no chip, nor could we find any evidence that anybody nearby was missing a cat. We decided to let her stick around, mostly because she's an excellent mouser and we're surrounded by all sorts of places that mice and similar critters lurk. I had a black cat already. One night, I was almost asleep when there was a banging on my door like the police had shown up. I opened the door and saw my neighbor with a black cat. She told me my cat had gotten out, and being that she was the neighborhood cat lady, I took her word for it. I brought the cat inside, told her to stop harassing the neighbors, and went to sleep. Next morning, I wake up and pour a can of food out. I walked into the room and saw the cat on the windowsill. I told her breakfast, and just then, this fuzzy black butt comes crawling out from under the bed. Turns out, my cat never got out, and that's how I got my second cat. Dog 1, husband, then boyfriend, finally agreed to getting a dog. I had a specific breed in mind, looked in classifieds, found a person advertising a new litter of 4-week-olds. It took an hour after he said yes for me to locate someone. We went to meet them, and to make sure it was a good breeder, not a puppy mill. Put a deposit down on the one we wanted. Went back and got her at 8 weeks old. They told us she was bad because she was so smart and stubborn. The ringleader of the litter. Those traits are all still true. Dog 2, we took dog 1 to a festival in our city. We were wandering around and she insisted we go into the SPCA tent. She walked in, sniffed dog 2, and sat by him and refused to move. She looked at us like she had picked out her new friend. It took a lot to get her to leave. We went to the SPCA 2 days later to let her have a playdate with dog 2. They still go along, so we took him home on a trial, then finalized it a few days later. Dog 1 picked out her brother. My youngest yelled at me in the shelter until I adopted him. Just followed me around screaming to be picked up and cuddled. I wasn't even there to adopt, I was doing a meet and greet for my foster. But he sat outside the door when I went in, yelling his head off and being really distracting. Kind of had to take him home after that, and he remains a snuggle puss of a cat to this day. The one before that was a foster fail. She almost got adopted, and I sobbed like I was giving up one of my own personal cats. That didn't go through, but I immediately knew that I couldn't let her go because I loved her so much. I still adore my little tiny tough cat. One of my dogs was adopted from a shelter 2 hours away. He was an aggressive dog who didn't stand a chance in a shelter, but we clicked instantly, and he's been the sweetest boy since the day we met. My cat was an impulsive birthday present for my dad, but my mom is allergic, so after a couple of days I ended up bringing him to live with me. He's been here for 3 years now. Never was a cat person until this guy. And my third dog was my daddy's. He came to live with me after my dad died. He's so loved and a perfect addition to all of my other babies. My wife said, I either want a kid or a dog. I got bamboozled though, because now we have both. Driving down I-80, I noticed something sliding across the road across my path. It was a kitten slide across the highway as if it was made of ice. For some reason I pulled over and jogged back to check on it. He was alive but angry. I finally managed to catch him by trapping him in a McDonald's cup that was in the median. I took him back to the van and my 2 daughters, and I took him to the Humane Society to drop him off. The doctor said he wasn't hurt bad and then said they really don't have room for him and asked if I wanted to keep him. No, I didn't. I'm not a cat person. I made the mistake of looking down at my oldest daughter, who was 6 at the time. Her eyes were the size of dinner plates and was making the please sign with her hands, so now I have a cat. Our dog was born at a shelter. A pack of Aussies was found together and one was pregnant and too far along to abort. We applied for a puppy, along with almost 300 other families, and ended up winning the chance to adopt one. I'm sure it had a lot to do with the fact that my wife put together a presentation about us, the fact that we foster dogs regularly and we have a small homestead that he would be put to work helping me care for the animals on. He still gets a bit worked up, but he does love herding the ducks and chickens around, even though the birds ducking hate it.